BAM Radio Network.
If you can give a child a better sense of self-esteem and creativity and imagination, you've probably given them the best possible gift you possibly can. That's for parents and teachers alike. I think music and the arts have the potential to really reach right down to the core of a child's sense of imagination and feelings. We have to be very, very sensitive at times when a child is working in those areas because a wrong word or a discouraging word can really have tremendous negative impact.
Welcome to Music and Learning. I am Marianne Harmon. Hi, Bob. I'm excited to have you as a guest in our BAM neighborhood. Thank you. Parents get inundated with all the time that TV's not good for kids. And we know Sesame Street is good TV. And I believe a lot of it is because of the wonderful music. So when the program was first being designed, why did you know and they know that music would play such a big role?
Well, you're right in saying, why did they know? I should preface this by saying it was probably the most highly researched show on television, adult or children. There was 2 years worth of full research going on prior to the first show being shot and certainly aired. And interestingly enough, our research is just as important now as it was 40 years ago. In fact, when the writers get their workbooks for the 42nd season, it will say the 42nd experimental season of Sesame Street. And that really is the feeling. But everything comes out of our research. And their basic philosophy, they want to reach and teach the whole child in all areas, cognitive, affect, not just numbers, letters, shapes, but with their social and emotional life, language development overall, and literacy and so forth. And they found that kids love music. Everyone loves music. They're wired for music, really. When they were testing kids, they knew, for instance, that kids loved to listen to little jingles and commercials, and they could recite all kinds of things about breakfast cereals and you name it. So they thought, why not use some of these same kinds of techniques where music was used to attract children?
You had once shared with me a story of a boy with the song Come Let's Play.
And that was one that really can never get out of my mind. I've done hundreds of songs in the show with children and so forth, but this one day it was a little song called Come Let's Play. It's sort of like a Simon Says, put your hands on your nose and your toes and etc. And I was supposed to do it to this little boy, but he had some really special needs. He was very, very hyperactive, about 4.5 or 5 years old, and he was running around the studio, and we thought we were going to have to cut the piece with him. And the director, John Stone, said, let's just do it and never mind using the child. And I said, well, run tape and let me see what happens. So as he ran by me, I sort of made a pass and grabbed him and put him up my arms just about the time I started singing the song, Come On, Let's Play. And fortunately, there was a monitor right next to the television lens. Usually we don't want children watching the monitor during a taping, but he was fascinated seeing himself in that monitor. And I was singing the lyrics right into his ear. So he was hearing it and seeing himself, and he almost anticipated every move that I was asking in the song. And when we finished, his parents were there, and there was another social worker that was with him, kind of helping the parents take care of him. And they were absolutely astounded. They said they had never seen him respond as strongly as he had during that piece. And we kind of talked about it, and we felt it was the combination of the visual reinforcement, seeing himself and hearing the lyrics, but it was definitely music that got through to this child where other things hadn't. I can do one more musical example that I always think of, and that's a song that Joe Raposa wrote called Being Green. And, of course, it was written for Kermit the Frog, and that's just a neat little song for a frog until one night I was out in Oregon after a concert with the Portland Symphony, and I was tuned in the Tonight Show at around midnight, and Ray Charles was on singing Being Green. And I almost fell out of bed at the impact that it had. And, by the time he got to when green is all there is to be, it could make you wonder why wonder, I am green, it's beautiful, and I think that's what I want to be. And I thought, oh, goodness, this has a whole another level than I'd ever thought of that song. Even to this day, 40 years later, it's probably one of the most poignant and affirming statements about racial differences and pride ever recorded. And when I use it, I've started using it in concerts. When you look in the audience, especially if it's racially mixed, you'll see people nodding their heads saying, yep, that's the way it is.
It's so subtle. Well, I know that Sesame Street's extremely committed to what's good for children. And as time goes on, the program keeps evolving to meet the new socioeconomic and cultural differences in our country and the different makeups. They've also toned down a lot on things like the flash and lights, where they used to have like the number one just jump out at you at different sizes and different volumes. But as a result of all the brain research, it appears that had a big impact on Sesame Street's decision to change things a little bit.
You know, we've had the good fortune of not being on a commercial station, on a public television station that cuts you a little more slack than if you were hyping, products. Sometimes kids' shows are built around a product. We have never done that. I'm not saying we don't have things out there, but the show is always built on the integrity of what we're trying to teach the child. I mean, we had a lot of criticisms all along the way, and they were very, very helpful. For some children, that was too much energy going by, and that was Grace Slick and Jefferson Airplane doing that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 going by. And, they try all different kinds of things. So I think we've made lots and lots of corrections over the years based on feedback from parents and teachers and people that are professional in the children's industry, and it's very, very helpful. We heard from the Latin community during the first year saying, we'd like to be represented. So by the third season, that's when we had a Maria and a Luis on the show to speak Spanish.
Often I see you at conferences where we both happen to be there, and I've listened to you speak and talk a lot about how if music is involved in television, it gets more of the brain involved. And I think that if you could take a moment on that, our listeners will understand that it's okay to watch television as long as what you're watching is quality and that the music is quality, that it's really going to be of benefit to the child and to the brain. If you could share some of those things that you teach teachers about at conferences on that importance.
Most of our music, for 89% of the time or more, is a continuation of whatever the script is based on what the research has come up with and the writers come up with. But I think in our case, music has just been a very, very strong component. In years past, when our show, in the earlier years, the show was sometimes shown 6, 7 times a day on 2 or 3 different channels, a couple of PBS channels and other channels. And after concerts, sometimes parents would come up and say, and they thought I was going to say, isn't that wonderful? They'd say, gee, if my child is watching 7 hours of Sesame Street a day, I was forced to say, that's about, 6 hours a day too much. You should really limit, no matter what they're watching, to, depending on the age, to maybe an hour and a half. But I think it's really imperative for parents to monitor, especially for young children and probably even slightly older, to be really monitor very, very closely what they're watching and how much they're watching, because it has a tremendous impact. And you're right, the brain work that's going on now with all the neurosurgeons and even some things just in the last few years where they can now determine exactly what kinds of things are affecting a 1, 2, 3-month-old. What we're finding out now is that almost from birth, children, babies, infants they just want to start talking and communicating. And there's some very, very exciting research coming out of all this, which may end up really kind of changing some of the ways education is taught. I think we're starting to understand that even infants, even before they're born, they feel that rhythm when they're born. They can feel the heartbeat of their mother and so forth. So there's an innate built-in rhythm that they feel. I think the one message for parents that I would like to get across is that every child should be involved in some sort of music program, and the country should have sequential music programs from pre-K all the way up through 8th grade and through high school, actually, because it makes an enormous difference in a child's life.
You stated that you've used music to teach all the goals through the last 40 years in Sesame Street, and that there was a quote from Jim Henson.
Right at the very top of the 2 years worth of research, he knew that Muppets were going to play a big part of the show. And Jim loved music, and he used it all the time in his Muppets and even in his own Muppet show and so forth. But he said, music is a part of everything we do. And like puppetry, it has an abstract quality that speaks to a worldwide audience in a wonderful way that nourishes the soul. And I think music and the arts really have an edge on a lot of other things in life about being able to nourish a child's soul, especially today when probably when families, there's a tremendous amount of pressure in family life today, single parents, poverty, addiction, and music and the arts can really restore that harmony and balance and sense of peace and calm in their lives. And perhaps in a music or art or band or symphony class, that might be the only place where they can get that sort of balance. Because one thing, there's no pressure, there's no competitions. And I heard a teacher a few years ago, she said she heard this kid somebody said to this music teacher, gee, it's too bad that John has dropped out of school. And the teacher said, well, he's not dropped out of my class. He's there every day. This kid was sneaking back into school just to go to his music classes. And everybody's not going to be a math or a science whiz kid, but it's wonderful when a child can excel in something, and the arts, music and the arts might be that area.
I really enjoyed hearing a little bit about the importance of the music, that music played in the Sesame Street program, and hope that people will extend that and know that that could be a good criteria for what makes TV worthwhile. And we appreciate your time because you're a pretty busy guy. Thank you. You've been listening to Music and Learning with Marianne Harmon. Thanks for listening.
This program is produced by Jack Street Media as part of the affiliate Nanocasting Network. Thanks for listening.